Our final question comes from Calvin Booth. Should the Nuggets trade for Zach LaVine?
Well,
I was
Calvin,
gonna say I didn't even get like a fake chuckle out of you with that one.
it took me a second to process it. Let's go over some of the basics. LaVine's 29. We are assuming, are we not, that Michael Porter Jr. is the outgoing main salary in a hypothetical LaVine trade, right? We sort of have to.
Yeah. Because you can't trade Murray or Gordon, and you're not going to trade Jokic.
So then it's sort of a 1-to-1. MPJ's 26. He's 3 years younger. 2 years left on his deal, $79 million total. LaVine's got 2 for 95 after this one. LaVine, more volume and accuracy from deep. MPJ does not self-generate threes. 92.1% of his threes have been assisted for his career, just under 91% this year. LaVine does. 60% assisted on threes, 56.8% this year. LaVine is not a genius passer, but his career assist rate is 3 times that of Michael Porter Jr.'s. Porter Jr.'s bigger, better defender. Maybe you like him as a someone that's going to score closer to the basket. That's about it. I think the comparison recommends LaVine pretty strongly if you don't care about the money, which obviously the Nuggets sort of have to. But if you're also trying to address the non-Jokic minutes, I think LaVine is much more helpful in those than MPJ is.
I think the other part of this, though, too, is what else would need to be attached to get Zach LaVine. So, like, Michael Porter Jr. has to be the meat and potatoes of the outgoing salary. Right. If you just include Zeke Najee's deal, the trade works, I believe. But are you also, like, if you're the Bulls, are Porter and Zeke Najee, is that enough for you to give up Zach LaVine and say, well, we got off that deal, we broke him up into cheaper players. Zeke Najee has another 3 years left on his contract after this one. Denver's not giving, I mean, they could give you a pick swap, but if I'm Denver, even though I think Zach LaVine is probably the better fit or does more for the non-Jokic minutes, does he optimize the Jokic minutes when you have Jamal Murray on the court? Is because now your wing depth is just, you have Peyton Watson and Christian Brown.
Yeah.
That helps, but like you're really part of the Nuggets, and they're still pretty big when you have Aaron Gordon and Nikola Jokic, like it's so tough. And so you're not, but this is where I was initially going, you're not giving if you're the Nuggets. I think Zach LaVine has been great, but because you have Murray, like you're not giving your 2031 first round pickup in this, are you?
Probably not. And I don't know that you should have to. From the Bulls side of this, I think you probably, I don't know how much you care about this, but the PR is probably pretty good if you're getting MPJ back in a LaVine deal, even if you're not getting a first or a swap or whatever, because he's younger.
Fills a positional need for them
he's
too.
Different, like, right? It's just not Zach LaVine, and he's sort of comparable in terms of like, he's a great shooter, offense first guy. You could talk yourself into more upside with MPJ. I don't know if I would be persuaded by that, but you could. I think like from Denver's side of it, if the question is, should they, I just view this as, would you rather have MPJ or Zach LaVine? I'd rather have Zach LaVine. It's more complicated than that because of the things you're saying of like, well, what do you think you could get this done for realistically? And it can't just be MPJ. From the Bulls side, I mean, that's not really what the question's asking. I feel like the question is asking essentially like, if the Nuggets can get LaVine for a reasonable package, should they do it? And I guess my short answer is yeah. I just think he addresses beyond the shortening your like forward depth. I think he just does more of the things you need that we've talked plenty about for Denver on this pod.
I guess it's just, I struggle to see, I might not do it. Because it's just like you have Jamal Murray, Zach LaVine. Then, like, what is that? If those two are going to play together at some point, what does the defense look like there? You're asking Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown to cover a lot up. Maybe Nikola Jokic has not been as good defensively this year as he was last year. He probably gets better by having to do less, but it's just, does that skew too far towards we're trying to optimize the minutes when our best player isn't on the floor? Because it kind of comes back to, are we giving up? Like, why would you burn a first round pick on getting a backup center type deal when you have Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid or somebody else on? Well, Joel Embiid doesn't really play, so bad example. But you know what I'm saying? When you already have your tentpole center, you wouldn't go out and give up a ton of stuff just to get a backup. And with this, it's okay. He doesn't necessarily have to be a backup, but but it's also Michael Porter's not the best defender and he's up and down, but the size certainly helps and there's rebounding there from him. I just wonder, I guess you're not giving up a first round pick if that's what we're assuming. I just still wonder if now you're leaning too far into what we're trying to maximize the minutes that Nikola Jokic is off the floor, which, by the way, are probably never going to be great.
Yeah.
And
No, I was going to say, I think that's how you would argue against it, is you would say we're caring too much about the non-Jokic minutes. And if in fact LaVine makes your best 5-man lineup worse than the one that has MPJ in it, then you probably shouldn't do it. Or if like the trade-off is negative, like the starters get that much worse and the reserves without Jokic aren't better enough to, or you know what I mean? Like, I think the first priorities should still be which 5 guys are the best for us to have on the floor to try to win the last 5 minutes of a playoff game. And if the answer is MPJ is better in that role than LaVine is, then maybe you don't do it. But I think LaVine is a better player. You lose size. That's not ideal. I still think with Gordon and with Jokic up front, like, you're big enough. And you can use Peyton Watson if you need to. I don't know.
well,
That's a great point, though, because you're focusing on the wrong thing. If it's like, well, this makes the non-Jokic minutes better, full stop, do it, right? Because you should care about Jokic on more than off.
and but to your point though, Zach LaVine has hit 32 completely unassisted 3-pointers this year. Michael Porter Jr. has hit 5.
No,
And
it's not part of MPJ's game. He doesn't do that.
right. And Zach LaVine is also the only other players that are shooting over 40% on pull-up threes while taking at least, I think, 4 a game are Jalen Brunson, Tyler Hero, and Anthony Edwards. And it's like, there's just, and what do we talk about? Here's where I'm going back and forth with is, so you get Zach LaVine and maybe you bump up your 3-point volume a little bit as a team, which is still too low, but you're also losing one of your higher volume 3-point shooters. So is it enough of an upgrade? Like, even if we're looking at it from that perspective to where, okay, the self-creation is an upgrade, but you're not necessarily upgrading your shot profile a ton. And then the other thing I'm struggling is, I guess the Bulls do this. But like, if you're getting Zeke Naji and Michael Porter Jr. for Zach LaVine, is that like, that's just considered enough? That Zeke Naji deal, he can't get on the floor before DeAndre Jordan.
Who's the better player that they could get in a LaVine trade?
That's
Talking
also
from
fair.
the Bulls
I guess you
perspective.
could look at it as, is there a team that will turn around and trade for, like, could the Thunder get a hold of Michael, but the salary's too tough to match there, but a team that needs a functional shooter, would they come and give you something for MPJ? And now we're kind of looking at the Zach LaVine trade tree. So it does feel like an easier decision from their part. And if you're the Nuggets, by the way, part of the appeal is just getting off of the Zeke Naji contract at this point. But now what you've also done, though, is you've made it tough. And not that you should think in these terms, you've made it tougher to complete future trades, because now it's okay. Well, Dario Saric's $5 million is like our only mid-end set. He's going to pick up that player option next year. And I guess you shouldn't think in those terms. And then Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon will be trade eligible at some point. That would be my other question for this. I think it's defensible both ways. I don't know if I honestly don't know if I would do it. If it's just MPJ and Zeke Naji, I almost feel like maybe Denver's obligated to do it, but I just don't know if it does enough. And then if they do it, Grant, does this, like, what are the odds that Jamal Murray then isn't traded over the offseason?
What, I mean, I have no idea. I don't know.
I just look like I broke your, are you okay?
Well, I just try. I hadn't considered how this would affect the likelihood of Murray being traded. I don't know that he is tradable for value, so I don't know that he is going to be traded regardless. I guess you would. So are you like inching towards, well, you have LaVine now, he's duplicative with Murray. Is the next move to try to trade Murray to get another bigger forward back? So you're sort of like, you're changing out a second key roster spot.
Well, it's also that, but Christian Brown and Peyton Watson, like, they're coming up on their extensions. And so this team was kind of always headed towards a financial crossroads anyway. Mm-hmm. Apparently Denver discussed an extension per The Athletic. This was all reported by Tony Jones. Shout out, friend of the pod, Tony Jones, and Sam Amick of The Athletic. So I don't know. LaVine has 2 years left after this one, and like a boatload of money, almost $100 million for the final 2 years of that contract. I'm just wondering, so you're going to float because your core of, I know LaVine and Murray can be better defensively than people make them out to be, but when your 3 are Jokic, Murray, and LaVine, you lead all the way into offense, and you are already 7th on offense this year, right? Or they higher than that. I'm just wondering, I understand it, and I think it would, they're 6th in offense, Denver is, as we record this right now. but it's also like they're 13th in defense, and how much would going from Michael Porter Jr. to Zach LaVine really impact your defense?
It might not make a difference either way, right? Yeah, I think the assumption is you'd get a little worse because you're smaller. And I guess Porter Jr. is probably a better defensive player, like can actually protect the rim a little bit. I think like one illustration would be like salaries being equal. You wouldn't trade Gordon for LaVine because then your defense is just destroyed. But like, I don't know that I don't know. I keep coming back to, I just think LaVine's better. The Nuggets are obligated to get better. And so like, I don't know, like, do we stop it there? Obviously we didn't. We've gone 15 minutes on this, but you know, like, do we need to go
15
beyond
minutes
that?
on this? I think we've
No,
gone
I don't
5.
know. I'm exaggerating.
Well, do you think it makes more sense through the lens of strictly the playoffs, where it's just you need someone to generate stuff from scratch, and right now Jokic and Murray are your only options there, and Murray is often a roller coaster, or during those, let's say Nikola Jokic is going to play 40 minutes in the playoffs. During those 8 minutes he's not on the floor, you have a better chance of surviving rather than let's try to be as good as possible defensively around Jamal Murray or even without Jamal Murray. Or we'll just lean into maybe LaVine and Murray are both playing minutes without Jokic on the court. And that's what we really think will help preserve the offense and the differential better than if we lean into the defense of it all.
And I wonder too, like just from a replaceability standpoint, now MPJ is like in his early career is like a historically good, great, maybe just volume 3-point shooter with good size. Like at the same time, I think it might, tell me if you disagree with this. I think it might be easier to find a guy who's like passable defensively that can take and make a bunch of threes than it is to find someone who can be the high volume 3-point shooter on the move, also initiate some offense like LaVine is. I feel like I've never been a huge fan of LaVine. I want to make that clear. I just think his player type might be harder to find than MPJ. Like go find someone that's going to catch and shoot a bunch of threes, right? Like those guys are kind of out there and they're not always super highly paid.
His anomaly in that perspective is the size. Like you're not going to find someone who's 6'10" as easily that's doing that. But if he's not generating a ton of his own looks,
the self-creation,
he's been a better playmaker this year. Yes. But LaVine, to your point, he's definitely the better playmaker when it comes to initiating things.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I do it if I'm Denver. I'm concerned about it. Like I'm not sure that it's going to make me better. And there are going to be trades.
Drawing the line as Denver at Michael? They have no seconds to trade. So it's Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji. Like the Bulls, they asked for Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown. You're just no.
Yeah, probably. Just because like now
Strawther might become definitely more expendable if you're getting Zach LaVine. Like that could be something to consider.
You're already so thin, like in guys that you can trust. If you like Brown or Watson, certainly Brown, it's like, oh, I don't know, man. Like that's because Brown actually, once he's extended, there's another trade chip potentially that isn't just like integral to your core. So he has like down the line value. Yeah, I don't know if I go much beyond the deal you're talking about. If they start asking for more, I'm like pretty uncomfortable with it.
I wonder if they get Torrey Craig back as part of that deal from Chicago. I don't know what that. I'm not giving up Peyton Watson or Christian Brown to do it. I don't think, just because that's, I think that probably winds up impacting your defense more than giving up NPJ. But then you're giving up NPJ and one of those players. I'm very curious if that's just the framework, because if that's the package the Bulls were waiting on, though, I don't know why Zach LaVine wasn't moved already. I will say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I imagine if you're Denver and you crunch the numbers and it's like, we actually think this is like offensively in our best lineups, Michael Porter Jr. just is more valuable, then you don't do it. Even if you're sure also that LaVine props up the non-Jokic minutes, because the more we talk about it, the more that's a problem. But it's priority 2, I think, ultimately, like the non-Jokic minutes, even though the numbers are so glaring. I think you should care most about which 4 guys with Jokic on the floor make us the best version of ourselves. And if it's MPJ, then it's MPJ. And I don't know if that's true, but like if LaVine makes you better because of the shot creation,
him cutting on this team, like, oh my God, like with Jokic.
Oh yeah. So it's a tough question. I'm leaning towards I do it. Partly just because
I would do it too, but I'm not going beyond, if I'm Denver, MPJ and Najee. But then I'm going to have questions for why Chicago waited so long if that's the return they want to get.
Yeah.